Hello guys and gals, and this is part 4 of our reading of J.R.R. Tolkien's Farmer Giles of Ham. In the last episode, okay, I don't remember what happened in the last episode because it's been a week or two since I've actually recorded a video. But I needed to record one for tonight, and I got way behind with all the holiday stuff. So, I believe that was when Farmer Giles actually managed to chase down the dragon and subdue it enough, and the villagers got greedy. The villagers of Ham got a little bit greedy, and so the dragon made a bunch of promises that he doesn't plan to keep, but they let him go. So I don't know if that's good or not. I forget what the dragon's name is, but first of all, anyways, it's I'll find out here in a second. Right here, this is the copyright information. It says that Farmer Giles of Ham is copyright 1949, all rights reserved, and so I assume it's okay to use for my thing. If there is a copyright issue, I will remove the video. No questions asked. And we made it to page 119, I believe. And so, anyway, they sent the dragon on its way. We can go back one... Okay, wait. The blacksmith shook his head as he went back to his smithy. Ominous names, he said, Hilarious and Felix. I don't like the sound of them. The king, of course, quickly heard the news. It ran through the realm like fire and lost nothing in the telling. The king was deeply moved for various reasons, not the least being financial, and he made up his mind to ride at once in person to Ham, where such strange things seemed to happen. He arrived 4 days after the dragon's departure, coming over the bridge on his white horse, with many knights and trumpeters and a large baggage train. All the people had put on their best clothes and lined the street to welcome him. The cavalcade came to a halt in the open space before the church gate. Farmer Giles knelt before the king when he was presented, but the king told him to rise and actually patted him on the back. The knights pretended not to observe this familiarity. They're like, oh, he's a common farmer. Let's not even touch him. That's not part of the book, but that's probably their sentiment. The king ordered the whole village to assemble in Farmer Giles's large pasture behind the river, and when they were all gathered together, including Garm, who felt that he was concerned, Augustus Bonifacius Rex et Basilius was graciously pleased to address them. He explained carefully that the wealth of the miscreant Chrysophylax all belonged to himself as lord of the land. He passed rather lightly over his claim to be considered suzerain of the mountain country, which was debatable. But we make no doubt in any case, said he, that all the treasure of this worm was stolen from our ancestors, yet we are, as all know, both just and generous, and our good liege Aegidius shall be suitably rewarded. Nor shall any of our loyal subjects in this place go without some token of our esteem, from the parson to the youngest child, for we are well pleased with Ham. Here at least a sturdy and uncorrupted folk still remain, the ancient courage of our race. The knights were talking amongst themselves about the new fashion in hats. The people bowed and curtsied and thanked him humbly, but they wished now that they had closed with the dragon's offer of £10 all around and kept the matter private. They knew enough at any rate to feel sure that the king's esteem would not rise to that. Garm noticed that there was no mention of dogs. Farmer Giles was the only one of them who was really content. He felt sure of some reward, and was mighty glad, anyway, to have come safely out of a hasty business with his local reputation higher than ever. The king did not go away. He pitched his pavilions in Farmer Giles's field and waited for January the 14th, making as merry as he Sure, I'm going to just check here. 21. Making as merry as he could in a miserable village far from the capital. The royal retinue ate up nearly all the bread, butter, eggs, chickens, bacon, and mutton, and drank up every drop of old ale that there was in the place. The next 3 days, there was in the place in the next 3 days. Then they began to grumble at short commons. But the king paid handsomely for everything in tallies to be honored later by the exchanger. I'm going to assume that's like an exchanger. It says exquare, which he hoped would shortly be richly replenished. So the folk of Ham were well satisfied, not knowing the actual state of the equatere. I think that's probably like the royal treasury, actually. There he is pitching a tent and eating up everything. January the 14th came the feast of Hilarius and of Felix, and everyone was up and about early. The knights put on their armor, the farmer put on his coat of homemade mail, and they smiled openly until they caught the king's frown. The farmer also put on tail-biter, and it went into its sheath as easy as butter, and stayed there. The parson looked hard at the sword and nodded to himself. The blacksmith laughed. Midday came. People were too anxious to eat much. The afternoon passed slowly. Still, Tailbiter showed no sign of leaping from the scabbard. None of the watchers on the hill, nor any of the small boys who had climbed to the top of the tall trees, could see anything by air or by land that might herald the return of the dragon. The blacksmith walked around whistling, but it was not until evening fell and the stars came out that other folk of the village began to suspect that the dragon did not mean to come back at all. Still, they recalled his many solemn, astonishing oaths and kept on hoping. When, however, midnight struck and the appointed day was over, their disappointment was deep. The blacksmith was delighted. He's kind of a dark guy, if I remember, always spouting dark prophecies. Was it Cassiopeia? Of the old Greek myth, Cassiopeia, who could only foresee doom and gloom. I don't know, I only know it from some animated Hercules cartoon. Anyways, that Disney put out. So, anyways, I told you so, he said, but they were still not convinced. After all, he was badly hurt, said some. We did not give him enough time, said others. It is a powerful long way to the mountains, and he would have a lot to carry. Maybe he has had to get help. But the next day passed, and the next, and they all gave up hope. The king was in a red rage. The victuals and drinks had run out, and the knights were grumbling loudly. They wished to go back to the merriments of court, but the king wanted money. Okay. He took leave of his loyal subjects, but he was short and sharp about it, and he canceled half the tallies on the equiquare. He was quite cold at Farmer Giles and dismissed him with a nod. You will hear from us later, he said, and rode off with his knights and his trumpeters. The more hopeful and simple-minded thought that a message would come from the court to summon Master Aegidius to the king to be knighted at the least. In a week the message came, but it was a different sort. It was written and signed in triplicate, one copy for Giles, one for the parson, and one to be nailed on the church door. Only the copy addressed to the person was of any use, for the court hand was peculiar and as dark to the folk of Ham as the book Latin. But the person rendered it into the vulgar tongue and read it from the pulpit. It was short and to the point for a royal letter. The king was in a hurry. I'm going to try to read this, but I'm not sure that I can. It says, we, Augustus, there's a bunch of letters here, and etc. make known that we have determined, for the safety of our realm and for the life keeping of our honor, that the worm or dragon, calling himself Chrysophylax, and the rich, be sought out and punished. I see the word punished. For the misdemeanor, torts, felonies, and foul perjury of the knights of royal household, are hereby commanded to arm and make ready to ride upon this quest as soon as Master Aegidius shall arrive. And this our court, January, as said, to see proceed himself to a trusty man and able to beat giants and dragons and other enemies, the king's peace, and now therefore be commanded, wants to join the company of knights. It goes something like that. I didn't want to take too long to read that, but the handwriting is really hard to read. Anyways, it was a summons for Giles to come see the king and become a knight. He's going to love that, isn't he? People said that this was a high honor and next door to being dubbed. The miller was envious. Friend Aegidius is rising in the world, said he. I hope he will know us when he gets back. Maybe he never will, said the blacksmith. That's enough from you, old horse-face, said the farmer. Mighty put out. Honor be blowed. If I get back, even the miller's company will be welcome. Still, it is some comfort to think that I shall be missing you both for a bit. And with that, he left them. You cannot offer excuses to the king as you can to your neighbors. So, lambs or no lambs, plowing or none, milk or water, he had to get up on his gray mare and go. The parson saw him off. I hope you are taking some stout rope with you, he said. What for? Said Giles. To hang myself? Nay, take heart, Mr. Aegidius, said the parson. Seems to me that you have a luck that you can trust. But take also a long rope, for you may need it, unless my foresight deceives me. And now, farewell and return safely. Aye, and come back and find all my house and land in a pickle. Blast dragon, said Giles. Then, stuffing a great coil of rope in a bag by his saddle, he climbed up and rode off. He did not take the dog, who had kept well out of sight all morning, but when he was gone, Garm slunk home and stayed there, and howled all the night, and was beaten for it, and went on howling. Help! Ow! Help! He cried. I'll never see dear master again. And he was so terrified, and he was so terrible and splendid. I wish I had gone with him. I do. Shut up, said the farmer's wife, or you'll never live to see if he comes back, or he don't. The blacksmith heard the howls. A bad omen, he said cheerfully. Many days passed and no news came. No news is bad news, he said, and burst into song. When Farmer Giles got to court, he was tired and dusty, but the knights, in polished mail and with shining helmets on their heads, were all standing by their horses. The king's summons and the inclusion of the farmer had annoyed them, and so they insisted on obeying orders literally. Okay, let's see. 128. Make sure this is right. Yes. Setting off the moment for Giles' arrival, the poor farmer had barely time to swallow a sop in a draught of wine before he was off on the road again. The mare was offended. What she thought of the king was luckily expressed as it was highly disloyal. Oh, unexpressed, because it was highly disloyal. It was already late in the day, too late in the day to start a dragon hunt, thought Giles, but they did not go far. The knights were in no hurry since they had started. They rode along at their leisure. Okay, let's see here. That's them and their horses. In a straggling line, knights, esquires, servants, and ponies trussed with baggage, and Farmer Giles jogging behind on a tied mare. When evening came, they halted and pitched their tents. No provision had been made for Farmer Giles, and he had to borrow what he could. The mare was indignant, and she forswore her allegiance to the house of Augustus Bonifacius. The next night they rode on, and all the day after. On the third day, they described in the distance the dim and inhospitable mountains. Before long, they were in regions where the lordship of Augustus Bonifacius was not universally acknowledged. They rode then with more care and kept closer together. On the fourth day, they reached the wild hills and the borders of the dubious lands where legendary creatures were reputed to dwell. Suddenly, one of those riding ahead came upon ominous footprints in the sand by a stream. They called for the farmer. "What are these, Mr. Egidius?" they said. "Dragon marks?" said he. "Lead on," they said. So now they rode west with Farmer Giles at their head, and all the rings were jingling on his leather coat. That mattered little, for all the knights were laughing and talking, and a minstrel rode with them singing a lay. Every now and again they took up the refrain of a song and sang it all together, very loud and strong. It was encouraging, for the song was good. It had to be made long before in days when battles were more common than tournaments. But it was unwise. Their coming was now known to all the creatures in the land, and the dragons were cocking their ears in all the caves of the west. There was no longer any chance for them catching old Chrysophylax napping. As luck, or the gray mare herself, would have it. Wait. Get him a check here. 29. To page 30 now. When at last they drew under the very shadow of the dark mountain, Farmer Giles' mare went lame, and now had begun to ride along steep and stony paths. They had now begun to ride along steep and stony paths, climbing upwards with toil and ever-growing disquiet. Bit by bit she dropped back in the line, stumbling and limping, and looking so patient and sad that at last Farmer Giles was obliged to get off and walk. Soon they found themselves right at the back among the pack ponies, but no one took any notice of them. The knights were discussing points of precedence and etiquette, and their attention was distracted. Otherwise, they would have observed the dragon marks were now obvious and numerous. They had come indeed to the place where Chrysophylax often roamed, or alighted after taking his daily exercise in the air. The lower hills and the slopes on either side of the path had a scorched and trampled look. There was little grass, and the twisted stumps of heather and gorse stood up black amid wide patches of ash and burned earth. The region had been a dragon's playground. For many a year, a dark mountain wall loomed up before them. It had been a dragon playground for many a year. Now there's this big wall. Farmer Giles was concerned about his mare, but he was glad of the excuse for no longer being so conspicuous. It had not pleased him to be riding at the head of such a cavalcade in these dreary and dubious places. A little later he was gladder still, and had reason to thank his fortune and his mare. For just about midday, it being then the feast of Candlemas and the 7th day of their riding, Tailbiter leaped out of its sheath and the dragon out of his cave. Without warning or formality, he swooped out to give battle. Down he came upon them with a rush and a roar. Far from his home, he had not shown himself overbold. In spite of his ancient and imperial lineage, but now he was filled with a great wrath, for he was fighting at his own gate. As it were, and with all his treasure to defend, he came around a shoulder of the mountain like a ton of thunderbolts, with a noise like a gale and a gust of red lightning. Gotta lay off that Red Bull, buddy. The argument concerning precedence stopped short. All of the horses shied to one side or the other, and some of the knights fell off. The ponies and the baggage and the servants turned and ran at once. There was no doubt as to the order of precedence. Suddenly there came a rush of smoke that smothered them all, and right in the midst of it, the dragon crashed into the head of the line. Several of the knights were killed before they could even issue their formal challenge to battle, and several others were bowled over, horses and all. As for the remainder, their steeds took charge of them, and turned around and fled, carrying their masters off. 131. Excuse me. Choked some. Got some saliva down my windpipe. That's fun. Excuse me a sec. Okay. Whether they wished it or not, most of them wished it indeed. So all the horses ran away with the knights on them, and they were kind of glad about that because they didn't want to face the dragon. Okay. But the old gray mare did not budge. Maybe she was afraid of breaking her leg on the steep stony path. Maybe she felt too tired to run away. She knew in her bones that dragons on the wing are worse behind you than before you, and you need more speed than a racehorse for flight to be useful. Besides, she had seen this Chrysophylax before and remembered chasing him over fields and brooks and in her own country, till he lay down tame in the village high street. Anyway, she stuck her leg out wide and she snorted. Farmer Giles went as pale in his face, as his face could manage, but he stayed by her side, for there seemed to be nothing else to do. And so it was that the dragon, charging down the line, suddenly saw straight in front of him his old enemy with Tailbiter in his hand. It was the last thing he expected. He swerved aside like a great bat and collapsed on the hillside close to the road. Up came the gray mare, quite forgetting to walk lame. Farmer Giles, is much encouraged, had scrambled hastily on her back. "Excuse me," he said, "but were you looking for me by any chance?" "No, indeed," said Chrysophylax. "Who would have thought of seeing you here? I was just flying about." "Then we meet by good luck," said Giles, "and the pleasure is mine, for I was looking for you. What's more, I have a bone to pick with you, several bones, in a matter of speaking." The dragon snorted. Farmer Giles put up his arm to ward off the hot gusts, and with a flash, Tailbiter swept forward dangerously near the dragon's nose. "Hey," said he, and stopped snorting. He began to tremble and backed away, and all the fire in him was chilled. You have not, I hope, come to kill me, good master," he whined. "Nay, nay," said the farmer. "I say naught about killing." The gray mare sniffed. Then what, may I ask, are you doing with all these knights?" said Chrysophylax. "Knights always kill dragons, if we don't kill them first." "I'm doing nothing with them at all. They're not to me," said Giles. "And anyways, they are all dead now or gone. What about you? What about what you said about last Epiphany?" He has to remember his oaths. Okay, wait. Just going to check real quick here. Are we on 34? Checking real quick. 33. 34. Okay. What about it? Said the dragon anxiously. You're nigh on a month late, said Giles, and payment is overdue. I've come to collect it. You should beg my pardon for all the bother I have been put to. I do indeed, he said. I wish you had not troubled to come. Indeed, but every bit of your treasure this time, and no market tricks, said Giles, or dead you'll be, and I shall hang your skin from our church steeple as a warning. It's cruel hard, said the dragon. A bargain's a bargain, said Giles. Can't I keep just a ring or two? And a mite of gold in consideration of cash payments, he said. Not a brass button, said Giles. And so they kept on for a while, chattering. Oh, those are T's. Chattering and arguing like folk at a fair. Yet the end of it was as you might expect. For whatever else might be said, few had ever outlasted Farmer Giles at a bargaining. The dragon had to walk all the way back to his cave, for Giles stuck to his side with Tailbiter held mighty close. There was a narrow path that wound up and around the mountain, and there was barely room for the two of them. The mare came just behind, and she looked rather thoughtful. It was 5 miles, if it was a step, and stiff going, and Giles trudged along puffing and blowing, but never taking his eye off the worm. At last, on the west side of the mountain, they came to the mouth of the cave. It was large and black and forbidding, and its brazen door swung on great pillars of iron. Plainly it had been a place of strength and pride in days long forgotten, for dragons do not build such works, nor delve such mines, but dwell rather where they may, in the tombs and treasures of mighty men and giants of old. The doors of this deep house were set wide, and in their shadow they halted. So far, Cryophylax had no chance to escape, but coming now to his own gate, he sprang forward and prepared to plunge in. Farmer Giles hit him with the flat of the sword. Whoa, said he. Before you go, I've something to say to you. If you ain't outside again in quick time with something worth bringing, I shall come in after you and cut off your tail, to begin with. Well, that'll get his attention. Dragons are fond of their tails. 25. The mare sniffed. She could not imagine Farmer Giles going down alone into a dragon's den for any money on earth, but Cryophylax was quite prepared to believe it. With Tailbiter looking so bright and sharp and all, and maybe he was right, and the mare, for all her wisdom, had not yet understood the change in her master. Farmer Giles was backing his luck, and after 2 encounters, was beginning to fancy that no dragon could stand up to him. We're going to stop this right here. We made it to page 136, and we're going to see how Farmer Giles outsmarts the dragon. If you like this content, we're going to, first of all, put a bookmark in here. Sorry, I'm getting out of sequence here. We've been reading Farmer Giles of Ham by J.R.R. Tolkien. A very good book. And, So, if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.